Welcome back to season 1 of Delivering Better. I'm Sarah.
I'm Sophie.
I'm Jo.
Today we run Delivering Better, a campaign that is fighting for the maternity care we all deserve. On the podcast today we have an author, a birth educator and a podcaster. On her platform and podcast Birth Ed, she's interviewed a heap of incredible professionals working within maternity care, and we're here to pick her brain today. Megan Rossiter, hello.
Hi.
The legend.
Megan.
Welcome. Okay, first of all, could you just tell us a little bit about Birth Ed and how that all came about?
Yeah, absolutely. So, more than 10 years ago now, I started my midwifery training. And during my second year, fell pregnant with my now nearly 10-year-old son. And took maternity leave, went back and just didn't work financially, life around it. So I stepped away from my training in my third year and trained to teach hypnobirthing at that point in time. And kind of in the years that have passed since then, went on a journey of my own, found that the way that hypnobirthing was kind of being taught, existed in the world, sat quite uncomfortably with me. I found problematic in quite a lot of ways. And so I went on to develop my own method of birth education that is called the Birth Ed method, that is a really kind of holistic, non-judgmental, kind of the opposite of the polarising conversations that exist in so much of the conversations that exist around birth. Hopefully in a way that gives families an understanding of how the maternity system works, how they can kind of navigate their way through it, and have an empowering experience in whatever form that takes for them.
Great, thank you. And you've written a book, Birth Power. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So initially the kind of the tagline that went under Birth Power was how we lost it and how to get it back, because what I found is that the power in the birth space is not sitting with the women and the birthing people that are actually should be kind of at the centre of that experience. But it was a kind of long journey as to how we got to this point where we are not the people holding that power. That power has kind of been stripped from us, taken away from us. But there are a lot of things that we can do as we're entering that maternity system pregnant to take that power back, so that we can go through this like massively transformative experience, hopefully coming out the other side feeling strong, feeling powerful, feeling like we've had this incredible experience. Whatever that looks like, it doesn't necessarily matter to me what that birth looks like, but that you were the person that kind of held the decisions, felt very centered in the experience that you go on to have.
Yeah, nice, thank you. I think we've spoken about this, the group of us, as we were preparing to record this podcast, and we'd love to get your view on this. Like, how did we get here? How did we end up in this position where, to your point, you know, women feel like they don't have the power, the autonomy. Women and birthing people are having incredibly traumatic and difficult experiences on a daily basis. Maternity care is not prioritised. Would love to get, as the expert in the room, would love to get your sort of take on that, and like how we are here today.
I mean, how long have we been, girls?
55 minutes.
55 minutes left. I mean, writing. So one of the chapters in my book is actually one of the sections of the book. It was supposed to be a chapter. It became an entire section on kind of how did we get to this point in history. Yeah. And even narrowing it down to one short chapter on the actual history of it was a task in itself. But when we look back at kind of what has happened throughout maternity care history, there was a kind of pivotal moment, and this is when the dates are going to go out of my head, around the 1800s.
Broadly speaking,
a few hundred years ago, where the sort of birth started to transition from being a community event that happened amongst women mainly, a kind of event that happened with friends, family, supported kind of by other wise women, and sort of fell into the realms of medicine and surgery, which were independent of each other at that time, but those were spaces that were ultimately held by men. And this is when, at this moment in history, we started to do sort of postmortems and that kind of thing, and get a better understanding of the kind of anatomy of the human body, the physiology of the human body. And it was with this kind of newfound knowledge that birth went from being a kind of community event and bodily function to becoming a kind of medical event. And it was over that kind of 100 or so years that this transition really started to happen. And I think what's also really important to point out at this point is that not all of this is bad, you know, between everyone that's in the room at the moment, certainly everybody that's listening to this podcast, we will have benefited in some way from the medical aspects of maternity care, possibly. Probably, again, amongst us and everybody that's listening, we've probably also been harmed by the medical aspect of care. And it's kind of put us in this position where it's very difficult to kind of decipher what is the good bit of medical care and medical development that we want to hold on to, and what is the bit that has actually caused a lot of unnecessary harm to women and families of today. And when we look back over the kind of very, very complex history that got us to this moment, it can feel very confronting when you realise how much racism, harm, exploitation of women that have gone before us it took to get to this moment, to offer us the relative safety that we have in maternity care today. So it's a really bumpy, difficult ride of women being exploited, particularly vulnerable Black women being exploited, providing us the kind of care that we have today in, you know, plus loads and loads of other threads of history that got us to here.
It was so striking to hear it, to like see it written so explicitly in the book. Like, how can this system deliver the kind of safe but compassionate evidence-based care that everyone deserves when it is fundamentally built off a patriarchal, racist system to begin with that has been deeply exploitative and not focused on the best outcomes for the people who are using it, but largely the kind of needs of those who are administrating it. And I think when you look at it like that, you're like, yeah, of course we are where we are.
Yeah, I feel like every time I like peel back the curtain of like the history of how we've got to where we've got to, I'm like, oh my God, how did we turn birth into a dick swinging contest? How did we turn it into a contest
Copyright
where
Sophie
obstetricians are like competing with each other, and the victims of that are usually Black women who have been treated horrendously for centuries in order to experiment with women's bodies, in order for them to be the winners. It was never centred on women themselves. It was never centred on the care of women. This journey that we've gone on, never ever centred on the care of women. And sometimes I'm reading Unwell Women at the moment, and sometimes in that book they'll be like, and this person kind of cared about women, and then she'll be like, but was also incredibly racist and into eugenics, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah,
another one.
You didn't actually care about women then at all. Like, you didn't. There's no, like, every single one had this problematic thing where it was just a contest, a race to the top for them and a race to the bottom for women, essentially, in terms of how they were treated with birth. And you see it now. Once you see it, you can't unsee it in the system that we now operate in.
And I think there's a chapter in the book that I don't think has ever kind of filtered into the conversation around birth, which is, so there's the kind of the history of the maternity system is one side of how we got here. The other side of it is, who are we stepping into birth for the first time, the second time? And I think it's really easy to forget that as women, we have been shaped by the same things that are shaping the maternity system.
Yeah.
So we're going into that with this kind of, like, the kind of good girl expectation that we must behave well, that there's a kind of right and wrong answer to everything. There's so much that is shaping our own behaviours as we go into the maternity system that makes it either more easy or more difficult for us to interact with that. That is another layer of what is stealing our power as we go into it. Like, think how uncomfortable we often feel even just asking a simple question to somebody that we kind of deem to be hierarchically kind of superior. And it is those things would make it really difficult for us to hold power in a maternity system where we're stepping in and we immediately feel inferior to the people that are providing our care.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of like, what could we do to fix it? Addressing that kind of power imbalance is a massive part of what needs changing in the maternity system. Maternity system.
I'd love to understand how, as a society, we did this before medical intervention. Because to me, in my like idealistic brain, it's like, well, this was more of a matriarchal thing, right? And that knowledge was passed down, as is the structure of a matriarchy, where it's all about preserving the future and centering on children and sharing knowledge. And therefore, your like knowledge of birth and what was about to happen and how you were about to change was sort of gifted to you, rather than the dynamic, the power dynamic we now have, where you go into a doctor's office and you say, I've got pelvic pain, I'm 16 weeks pregnant, and they say, it's just growing pains, you'll be fine, move on. And there's no curiosity, there's no like, and that's my personal example. I know that's not the same for everybody, but I wonder what we can learn in some ways from how we used to do this that we've lost, that means that we are now in this weird position that we currently face.
Yeah, this is something that I would describe as passed down wisdom. So like the families, the women who have given birth before us, telling us things that don't make it into medical textbooks.
Yes.
Like the example that I always give is there is a woman that I looked after, and this is the one thing she always tells everybody, is she just goes, the most amazing thing was I was in the bathroom, the tiles on the floor were really cold, and I just kept pressing my head against the toilet seat. Like, that just is not going to be in an obstetric textbook.
Yeah.
But to her was like this pivotal thing that made giving birth doable for her. And it's that. And if we're talking back to the kind of the history, there was a period in the kind of early 20th century where you probably know about the kind of twilight sleep phase that everybody
Oh, can we talk a bit about what that is?
Yeah. So if you're not aware of what it is, this was a period in history where they had started to develop kind of more effective methods of pain relief for women in labour, and this was a combination of drugs that basically induced a state within a woman that completely took her mind away from her body. Ultimately, it didn't stop the pain that she was feeling. It made her forget it afterwards. Okay. So she got to the other side of birth completely unaware of what had happened with a baby. Because of the way that this altered her mind, it could lead her to behave quite violently. So it often also involved her being ultimately strapped down to a bed, so that she didn't behave in a kind of violent way to the people that were caring for her. When we look at this with a modern lens, where I can see we're all kind of recoiling, going, good God, this sounds absolutely awful. The thing that I find really interesting about this story is that the reason that it grew was actually as part of a feminist movement. It was actually as women going, we deserve the right to receive adequate pain relief when we are giving birth. And I just find that fascinating that, you know, when you look in hindsight, that sounds absolutely horrific, absolutely awful. There is no way I would ever want to go through that. But at that moment in time, it was a kind of forward-thinking feminist movement that was asking for it. And I can't remember where this conversation, what point I was trying to make about twilight sleep before I started talking about it.
I can't even remember what your question was, Sophie.
Pass down wisdom.
Oh, yes, pass down wisdom.
Yes.
Right, pass down wisdom. So what happened when basically an entire generation of women experienced birth in that way is that we sort of skipped a generation in the way that information was then passed down. And so
they'd forgotten everything.
Exactly. We're giving birth now. We're receiving information sometimes from our mothers, who actually, quite a lot of them, also experienced quite traumatic births or quite difficult births, or
quite medicalised
births, but also just births where like it was fine, but it wasn't like a transformative experience. It wasn't a powerful experience for them, and that's kind of part of where we are now, is that we don't have this collective of people around us giving us that there's, you know, I'm not talking this is how the physiology of birth works, or this is how an epidural works.
Also useful.
Helpful.
Yeah.
Be good to know before you're pregnant.
But also you don't need to, this is what I was saying, you don't. So all this morning we've probably all eaten breakfast.
Yeah.
We felt hungry. We ate breakfast. We digested it. We've probably been for a wee. Eventually, we'll go for a poo. No, that's what babies do. You don't need to know how it works in order for it to happen.
Yeah, you don't like not have a poo.
Exactly.
You're not like, I can't have a poo because I'm not sure really what's happening.
Yeah. And so this is
unless you're 2.5.
Unless you're 2.5 and you refuse.
Yeah.
And then pop some Movicol, you'll be fine.
It'll eventually come. And so I think where we've got to now with kind of birth education, antenatal preparation, is that it's like we're telling people this is how birth works, these are the choices that you've got, and we're sort of forgetting that actually part of the preparation shouldn't be that. It should be the kind of, if you're really talking to somebody about what birth felt like for them, not like, oh, it really hurt, but like, well, where did you feel? Okay, so you felt it in that bit of your back, and what did you do?
Yes.
How did somebody help you? Okay, you felt really panicked at that moment in time. What did you say to yourself in your head? Like, those are the conversations that
rather
I
than
think
it being
missing.
managed. Because otherwise we manage it, right? We manage those person not to feel that way, or not to, like, it's managed by someone else rather than you being able to manage that yourself because you've learned from other people how it happens.
And just sort of normalising the feelings and the emotions that you go through in birth. And I don't want this to come across, I'm not saying, oh, if you just do absolutely nothing, the baby's going to come out and there's not going to be any trouble. Of course, complexity has existed in childbirth for as long as childbirth has existed. But it's that kind of holistic wisdom, I think, that is missing from the conversation around birth.
The reason I contacted Jo when she posted about delivering better, I think sort of relates to this, because I didn't have traumatic births as such. I had 2 home births, but my second birth felt like I wanted it to be. And the reason for that I've tried to understand for, like, my youngest is now 6. But one of the things I come back to when I think about that birth is I totally understood what was happening to me in that moment. I understood every single thing that was happening, and I could feel where he was, what he was doing, what I needed to do. And like, the midwives were quite late arriving, and Gareth kept coming into the bedroom being like, "Are you all right?" And I was like, "I'm actually fine." Like, the contractions are painful, things are challenging, but I knew what was happening because it had already happened to me once, right? So there's that. But I also felt fully in control of what's happened. And I think about that birth, and I think about how this sounds like I'm like hippie, sort of hypnobirthing narratives, and that's not what I'm saying. I don't register the pain. I felt I literally finished that birth and felt super powerful. I felt like I could take on the world if I needed to, once I'd had some tea and toast and about 8 weeks in bed. But like, I felt like suddenly I looked at it and went, I can't believe I just did that. That's amazing. Because I felt in control of the situation. And when I think about delivering better, it's not about, I think anyone should ever birth in any specific way. I think people should birth the way they want to birth in the environments they want to birth in. But the thing for me that I take from it is that I want people to feel like they have control over that situation. They understand what's happening. They understand what they're feeling in their body.
They have autonomy.
They understand they have autonomy.
Yeah.
And it's not about, like, and I think people confuse that when I say I had a home birth with, oh, she's one of those people who had a home birth and you believe in this. It's not that. It's that I felt fully in control of my environment, of what was happening. And the midwife's role was not, they never were there managing my birth. I never felt managed. They sat on the sofa talking. They were just there to support me. And it makes me think about, perhaps that's what we were before. The role of other people in that room was to support the person who was making decisions and had the autonomy. And I think that in some ways is what we've lost through where we are now.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to point out that kind of care is important and valuable wherever you are, because it definitely tends to exist tends to be the best way when we're in our home environment. And if we're talking about kind of power, that's because when we are in our own environment, that is the space that we automatically hold power. And when we are in someone else's environment, that is where they hold power. But when we talk about kind of understanding the physiology of birth, I'm not going to go into loads of detail about how it works, but ultimately, in order for birth to work, you need to feel 4 things. You need to feel safe, you need to feel relaxed, you need to feel unobserved, and you need to feel undisturbed. Those are the kind of like 4 crucial things. But when we talk about physiology, that does not mean that physiology only happens in a vaginal home birth. If you are having a cesarean birth, physiology is still happening in your body. That just means like the biological functions are taking place in your body. And those biological functions will happen wherever you are, whatever kind of birth you are having, and they are really, really important things that have to happen to protect your physical health, your baby's physical health, your emotional health, your bonding with your baby, establishing, feeding, whatever it is. All of those things happen for a very specific reason, and therefore need to be protected for absolutely every single person that is giving birth. And I think sometimes we can go, yes, physiological birth, which is a term that has now been used to replace normal birth or natural birth or any other phrase that we have used in the past, but is now itself falling into the same issues that we fell into when we used the terms normal birth or natural birth, that the idea that it is put on a pedestal as a kind of like best way of doing things, when actually we're getting hung up in the semantics of the language, and we're not focusing on the fact that the biological processes are important for every single person, and that needs to be protected in a birth centre, in a labour ward, with an induction, with a caesarean. You still need to be feeling safe. You still need to feel relaxed. You still need to feel unobserved. You still need to feel undisturbed, so that yours and your baby's normal physiology can be protected as much as physically possible.
Yeah, because it's the support. Like, this is what we've had this conversation quite a lot around, like, because I've had 2 home births, I had 2 midwives, and those midwives were just there for me and my baby. They were just looking at me and my baby, and we talk about this a lot, but I think it's important to recognise that, because they, in my second birth in particular, they didn't do anything. No offence to midwives. They did loads. We love you. We love you. You were amazing. But like, they didn't need to do anything for me, right? And I was very fortunate with that. That might not have been a different day, a different time, anything. It might not have been the case. But in that moment, they just trusted me to go off and do what I needed to do. But in my brain, I still knew I was supported. Like, I remember them arriving and I was like, this baby's about to come out. Like, he's a second baby, and he was pew. And me feeling a sense of relief that it wasn't just me and Gareth there, right? Like, I liked that they were there. But they didn't necessarily do anything. They guided me. They guided me downstairs into a pool, and that was it. But I was supported. And so it's really interesting you say those pillars, because without probably realising, I was still supported. What that means in that sense is that you know that there's someone there who can guide you and support you if needed, versus how we work in a hospital setting where a midwife comes in, checks on you and goes again, comes in, checks on you and goes again, which maybe is fine. But like, if in a moment you realise you might need them and you turn around and they're not there, what does that mean? Like, when the way we resource hospitals, we treat it in this like medicalised way, but actually it's quite psychological, right?
And it's interesting because I think there is, the way the system currently works is that we start from the perspective of what the system needs. So for example, we have X amount of pounds in the pot. That means we can provide this many staff. That means that we just can't provide a full spectrum of birth options like home births, for example. So like, big shout out to our friends at Birthrights who are doing amazing work and like really tackling what is happening with home births at the moment, which is awful. And it's so important that anyone who gives birth has that spectrum of choice. So rather than starting from the what is best for the people who are using this system, what infrastructure needs to be in place, how do we need to properly resource that? Instead, it's like, this is the amount of money in the pot, this is what we can do with it.
Yeah. The massive irony that I always think with this argument, which is absolutely the argument that the kind of government and everybody will have, is that when they did research into providing continuity of care, because of the impact of continuity of care, reducing preterm births, reducing unnecessary intervention, it saves approximately £12 per woman, per family that is giving birth. So, which sounds like a small amount, but when you're talking about millions of women, if it's 1 million women, that's £12 million.
Yeah.
And so when we go, we can't staff it because it costs too much, we've got that political issue where we're going, because you're looking at the next 2 to 3 years. You're not looking at the lifetime of these babies that are being born and the potential benefit that is going to bring to their short-term health, their long-term health, their education. When you look at the immediate treatment of a preterm baby, the potential learning difficulties that baby might go, like, there is so much, but because budgets focus on now, and medical research focuses on
short-sighted.
now, there is no long-term goal for like improving care.
No, go ahead.
And I think actually, maybe this is sort of a slight tangent, but moving into something, and this is sort of related to, I guess, women birthing people, how we sort of we're seeking more information, and you know what you do, but obviously, as we all know, standard antenatal appointments are like very short. They're very clinical. You're in and out. And you've said before that, I'm going to quote it, pregnant women are looking for the evidence, the nuance, the detail that's missing from antenatal appointments. And I guess I was wondering if we could have a bit of a discussion about like what information aren't they getting? Like, do you know what I mean? Like,
Where do we start?
Yeah.
But what aren't we getting? Or
I think, what are they getting?
Yeah.
I think that's the first
true.
question, is that those antenatal appointments are about 15 minutes long, and in that appointment your midwife still has to dip your urine, feel the baby, do your blood pressure, do all of the kind of clinical tasks to assess your kind of physical well-being, hopefully ask a few questions about your kind of mental and emotional well-being, not that she's got any time to do anything about it if you say that you're not feeling great,
Right.
and that is just for your like very standard uncomplicated person going into that appointment, forgetting that there are women going into these appointments who are coming from extremely difficult social backgrounds, relational backgrounds. Like, there is so much that comes up for families for the very first time when they're pregnant, and a midwife's job is to kind of protect that person at this extremely vulnerable time in their life, and they have been given this
tiny
minute
window
to do it. And so like birth education, that's like down here in the like list of things that midwife needs to be providing in this kind of tiny appointment. So often it will come from leaflets that are handed out. There might be, and this all disappeared during COVID, some sort of antenatal education program within the hospital. But we go back to that issue that we've talked about already, in that what is being talked about ultimately is, here's a list of the things that might be done to you or that you might choose for pain relief ultimately. And you know, I don't like to use this word, but in some ways it's a bit like grooming them to fit into the system, to make the way that they give birth easier for the people that are caring for them. It's not an individualized birth preparation where we're really looking at the individual person and going, right, well, who are you at this moment in time? What is important to you? How do you want to give birth? What are you likely to find difficult? What do you need? Those conversations, they're just absolutely not happening. You might get a half an hour birth choices appointment at 36 weeks, by which point you hope that you'd started that preparation kind of much earlier. So I think I would say the question is more, what are they getting, rather than what aren't they? Nothing.
Well, they're check boxes, aren't they, often? I think, I mean, you see this across institutionalised care, right? You see this in education. My kids are at school. It's exactly the same in education. It is, you need to do this and this and this to fit into the format that we need you to, and anything outside of that is a nice to have, but it's not really needed. And the problem with that, to your point, is that actually, no, it is needed, and it saves you money, and it's better for people. And this is where I come like up against government in a way that I find really challenging, which is that I know we say like they do it because they have a short-term focus. Again, that I think that's a very generous thing to say, that it's because it's short term.
That's not. I think fundamentally
they don't.
It's
ideological. It's ideological, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't think this is a priority.
No.
You deep down inside think women should put up and shut up. You think birthing people should put up and shut up. You think they should just get on with it, and therefore these are the things that you need to be seen to be doing, which is your interpretation of care, which is that we care about your blood pressure, we care about this, we care about that. But actually, I would flip it completely on its head, which is that yes, those things are important, but like, I'm sure there's plenty of studies that show if a woman is under a lot of stress and things are getting very hard in her birth, then actually her blood pressure might go up, and you might see like, it's that thing where we don't see that all of this leads to these problems that you're actually assessing for, right? Like, but we don't seem to think we need to care about that.
I think we also need to like really sit with how conscious and explicit a process it has been to get us to where things are. So one of the things that came out in the Amos investigation interim findings was this statistic about how there have been 748 recommendations made in various inquiries over the years about how care should be improved. And the vast majority of those have just sat in reports on a shelf and nothing has happened. And that tells you everything you need to know about how much of a or a little of a priority it is. But I think sometimes like we need to kind of sit with that, like how performative it is often, the way that this issue is dealt with, and how deeply indicative it is of where governmental priorities lie. There is no 748 recommendations, like 748, and none of them, or very few of them, have seen any movement. And I think we need to get very clear about how this is not going to change. No government is going to change this of their own volition.
I also, this is going to be, I don't know if this is too dodgy.
Spicy.
Yeah.
We
I
love
don't know if it's
spicy.
too dodgy. No, it might be a bit too dodgy.
Can always cut it.
Yeah, we cut it.
This is going to sound terrible, but I think, maybe a tangent, the release of the Epstein files tells us a lot about how society perceives women.
Yeah.
And people who make decisions for government are people in positions of power, and, not to name names, often people who are literally directly related to some of the most powerful people in the world, who perceive women as less than, unimportant, disregarded. So your point is very valid that, like, we've got these 748 recommendations and they've decided not to act upon them. I would challenge that we go a level above that, which is that the reason that we're in this situation is because of the same reason that women were accused of hysteria for a long time, the same reason that we dismissed women's emotions. We're frankly not important to society.
No.
And those who have the money and make decisions don't regard us as so. And so we can have politicians who come forward, who are in control of our healthcare system right now, and do the words, the nice words, and say that they do care. They do not care. And when I contrast that to the behaviours of men that are in power around the world that has been revealed over the past 6 months in all its gore and horror, it's the same thing. You don't care about women, you don't prioritise women, and you don't think they're deserving of care. And it all comes from the same
Mic drop.
gross, disgusting, patriarchal ways. And I think when we look at birth in that way, that's very important. It's very important for us as our campaign. But I actually think we need to zoom out and be realistic that this is actually a societal issue, that we don't give a shit. We don't give a shit. And so that moment in that room with that consultation is a product of this moment up here of how society views women, because we say, you don't need to talk about your feelings, you're just all hysterical, you're too emotional anyway, go away. And often that's another woman, without realizing, carrying that message to you. And that is the bit that, if I think about it too much, it makes my chest go tight and I feel overwhelmed as a campaigner. I'm sorry.
No,
and that's why I
it
was
feels
wary
good.
saying it, because I think you look at this situation here and you're like, oh, the Epstein files, that's awful. I mean, it's nothing to do with birth. And you're like, it's everything to do with birth.
Yeah.
It's everything to do with what's happening in the world right now, because it's everything to do with how we treat women within societies.
Because it's I can't think of the word, but it's a microcosm. So
It's a symptom of...
It's a little insight into it, and it basically shows it acts as like a catalyst in a way.
Yes.
And
It's also this
or
thing
it's
of
an insight into it, or it is just it.
Fair
It
enough.
is just it. They are some of the most powerful people in the world, and the experience we have in that setting is because these people think that they can treat women that way. And maybe people will disagree with that and say, you can't mix one with the other, but it's all the same to me.
It's all related.
It's all
Sorry,
related.
and I knew it would be a bit too much.
I remember Ilian Morrison, who we had on the pod, who's on the pod this season, saying, like, the vast majority of women that she had spoken to about that most recent kind of tranche of information from the Epstein files were not surprised, horrified, outraged, etc., not surprised.
No women are surprised.
Because it is, the vast majority of women at some point will have experienced very explicit expressions of that system. I remember a man saying to me, somebody I was very close to after I gave birth, I don't understand why you describe your birth as traumatic, because you survived. Now, there are many people who have far worse experiences than I did.
What a low bar.
But it was pretty horrific. I mean, my body literally was split in half with no pain relief. And I remember thinking in that moment, oh, okay. It was like seeing into something and understanding that I was just expendable.
Be grateful you didn't die.
Be grateful that you didn't die.
You're just a vessel to
You're
get
just
this
a vessel.
baby out. Like,
to get-
this is our baseline now, is like, are you both alive?
Yeah.
It used to be, are you both healthy? And now it is,
Is it,
are you both
alive?
alive?
That's not a good enough benchmark for care.
But I think we do need to break this open, because the only way that I think you're going to rally people to fight for this at the force that it needs to be met is the realization of where this all comes from, right? Like, this is a massive, massive issue that goes beyond Department for Health and Care or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know.
You know, that
That one.
Yeah, that
those
one.
lads,
That
funding. Because when you narrow it down to that, you ignore all of the stuff that sits above that has been the reason that it hasn't been funded in the first place,
Yeah.
and all of the stuff that sits above that has put into power a government that chooses not to fund it, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And I can't break those things apart. And I think when I think about why mothers need to pay attention to this, it's because it's a rallying call for like the what is it, like the validity of our existence. Like it's our ability to exist in the world in a way that is happy and healthy and safe. And birth is where you meet that head on.
Yeah.
Sometimes for the first, especially if you're a white, able-bodied woman, you're probably going to meet that for the first time ever head on.
Yeah.
Now, if you're not a white, able-bodied woman, it's not the first time. None of this is a surprise.
Yeah.
And you're facing that every single day since the day you were born. But I think for white, able-bodied women, it's a shock, because you hit that system and go, shit, none of this, no one cares about me. And it's like, I'm really sorry that's the case.
And it's taken you until 35.
Yeah, and lucky you, it's taken you until you were 35 to realise that, but you should feel really angry about it.
Yeah.
So
We're not
I need to get
Yeah.
off my soapbox, don't I? Off now.
Just see our
Down
group
you
chat.
get.
I
wanna
imagine.
talk
I need to get in.
Okay, can I talk a bit about Megan's Instagram account?
That's a soapbox.
We're obsessed with. I can't tell you the number of times a month that a post of yours gets shared in that group chat with us all being like, mood, amazing, this. Like, and I think, I mean, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that, because I think one of the things that resonates so strongly is that you're so prepared to say the things that sometimes you just wish people would be brave enough to say but kind of aren't saying. And I'm just interested about, like, what's your experience like of talking about this, like, deeply complex, very nuanced issue,
like very publicly on social media.
and also in a way where, you know, none of us who work in this space ever want to be seen to be kind of perpetuating fear. So, like, how do you navigate that?
So there's 1 month a week, one week a month before my period where I just can't at all, because if anyone comes back to me with anything, I'm like,
I feel you.
sorry, I
Yes.
feel so bad.
Okay,
So that's the first step, is working out which
so we
3
can track
weeks
your
of the month.
cycle based.
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Your
When it's just
Instagram
nice, pretty
is
pictures.
your cycle tracker.
Yeah, exactly. It has taken like definitely like years of practice to work out how to. It's hard, because this is what I found writing the book as well, is to have a conversation where if I'm just talking to one person and I know about you and I know what you want, I know what you found difficult, I know what you've experienced before, you can tailor the way that you're speaking exactly to that person in a way that's not going to upset them, in a way that's going to make them feel strong, that it's going to give them what they need. When you're talking in a book or on the internet, you're talking to ultimately anybody that's going to read it. I think I have got comfortable now with the fact that there are people in the world who will choose to deliberately misunderstand you.
Yes.
And those people...
It's a nice way of thinking about it.
Yeah. And they will. I'm good, close friends with the block button for those people. If you're not even going to... I'm very, very happy to engage in like
constructive
debate or actually... And I have actually learned a lot of interesting things from people that have disagreed with me. And then I've been like, actually, do you know what? you've got a point. But if someone's just coming because they want to shout at the internet, I don't have time for in my life. But I think I feel like I do really deeply understand the different perspectives of like having worked in the maternity system, having had an induction of labour, having had a home birth, having like had a wealth of different experiences, and having supported so many women who all come to birth wanting completely different things. But ultimately they kind of all want the same thing. They all want to feel strong and powerful and cared for in their birth, and the way that they express that, the way that they make that happen, can be very different, and whether or not they get that can be very, very different. But I think sometimes just realizing that we're actually all on the same side, we're often just suggesting different ways to make that happen, even when, you know, there's a really big group of campaigners that also directly campaign to government that are campaigning for birth changes in a completely different way, that would like to see everybody giving birth in hospital, that would like to see much higher rates of intervention, because they often have been through very, very traumatic experiences themselves. And I think it's just taking a step back and not thinking about it from a personal perspective, and just trying to understand why people are doing what they're doing. And most frequently the why is always it's actually the same. It's actually the same thing.
And I think you said like this needs to be like a rallying call. We need to be all doing something. And I think, you know, your point around, you know, there are various different groups and individuals campaigning and talking in this space. And the thing that I won't talk too much about the campaign delivering better, but the thing that I've learnt the most over the last few years about being involved in this is that there are so many diverse views and so many different groups who are sort of in this space. But actually, to Megan's point, taking a step back and everyone reflecting on the purpose of why we're campaigning, for whatever specific ask that may be, actually, we're better together. We're better as one.
We're more effective as well.
We're more effective. And there are lots of collectives that exist. But it's actually, it's not about, it's about that higher level aspiration as opposed to that specific thing. Am I making sense?
There are a lot of different ideas as to how we can make something happen, but
we all need to be safe.
It's the same thing.
I also think there is shared goals and objectives, and with any government that isn't doing what they should do, by everyone deciding how people should give birth or where people should give birth, you're doing the government a favour, because you're so busy arguing on all of this, whereas actually like my point earlier around like the role that midwives played for me was that I felt supported. I think we can all agree that that's what we want in birth. It doesn't matter where you do it or what you want to be supported. So back to the government, what are you going to do to make sure that all birthing people feel supported when they're giving birth? What is your plan? What money are you going to put to it? What provision are you going to put to it? If you turn that to be the question versus when they birth in a birthing centre or when they're in a hospital, or whether or not we should allow home births or not, like you're doing their job for them of avoiding making this a priority, because you're making it a conversation about like the nuance, and it is nuance in the grand scheme of things, versus like people are going to give birth no matter what the setting, they're often not felt supported. That's an issue. How do we fix that?
That's the starting point.
How do we fix that? And because of the way that policy change works, we get into the details, and we give them parliamentary briefings that have all the details of these things.
I can't actually judge, because
it's what you love to do. It's what I do, right? It's literally my job to do that with across lots and lots of issues. But I think then what we do is we almost sometimes feed into the little details that we're now going to pull and argue about, also, versus the bigger priority, right?
This goes back to Megan's point about not even realising that we are products of the system itself. So sometimes when we've been doing campaign stuff, I will find myself self-censoring the asks that we put forward to government to say, oh, there should be some easier wins in here, I'm not sure that that's feasible. And I remember definitely both of you and also other people who support and advise us coming back and be like, that is not your problem. If there is not enough money in the pot for that thing, that's government's problem to solve. Like, our job is to put forward the asks. But it's interesting because in all of these ways, we are expressions of this system.
We also, a thing that really annoys me about campaigning as a whole, which is probably, not a good thing for me to say as a campaigner, is like, we write all these things and tell government what they need to do. You know what you need to do.
Yeah.
You've
got 748 recommendations.
Yes, 748 recommendations.
And yet we're still writing reports, we're still writing policy briefings because the government go, sorry, we just don't know what we should do, really.
Yeah.
It's just a bit of a mess. And so we feed into their like inept behaviour by carrying on telling them. And this is where I get stuck with delivering better, because I'm like, I sort of just want the narrative to be, can you just do something?
Yeah.
Can you just, like, what? It's not my job to tell you I'm a tax-paying citizen who you answer to. So I'm telling you, this is a total mess. Go and work out how to sort it out.
Literally your job.
But not even go and work it out. Here is how
worked out.
Yeah.
Here's some recommendations you already have.
This is what you need to do.
You want a suggestion? Yeah.
Here's
One of the
maternity review
748.
from 1932. You
Yeah.
could probably even use something from that if you like.
Yeah.
Like, it's just ludicrous. We're like I look at my puppy chasing his tail and I'm like, this is me. Like, this is what we're doing. We're just running around in circles. And while the government goes, sorry, it's like willful incompetence on like a national scale. It blows my mind.
When the history of this time is written, I don't think it is excessive to say that it will be seen as a period when hundreds of thousands of people were harmed at the hands of the state. I mean, I think we can say that with some confidence now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And yet there is not a huge amount of urgency. I mean, there's obviously an investigation going on.
There's no urgency.
But, you know, there is just, there's, sometimes you just think, where do we have to get to? Kind of, how bad does this have to be?
There are 1,600 people giving birth today.
Yeah.
God knows how many people have just given birth while we've been having these conversations. And the government
If it's the three of us talking, quite a few.
Quite a lot.
During their tea
and the
toast.
government goes, it's still a tricky one. Still not sure, really. We will come back to you. And it's like the national version of being on hold to like your electricity supplier, isn't it? You're just sat there waiting. You're like, I've got no electricity, and they're like, here's some hold music. Just carry on. Like, I feel like we're on hold to the government to do something. Like, that's what it feels like all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm loath to do any more. Like, we talk about like doing more research. What can we do? What more can we find out? And the whole model of campaigning, right, that I work on with all clients that I work with is, let's find a policy ask, let's turn that into a bit of creative, let's make a report, let's do a stunt, let's do a campaign, let's cut through, let's get some news headlines, and then let's see government policy change. And it might be because I've been doing it for a long time, but I'm like, you already know.
But also, this is this is pervasive. It's huge. It's the biggest thing.
Yeah.
I think that's what everybody forgets, is that everyone is born.
Yeah.
Everybody is born.
Everybody is born.
Louder for the people at the back.
Yeah.
I'm going to look down the camera and tell everybody is born. It's true. Everybody is born. This should be funded appropriately.
Yeah.
This is not some niche. It's like treated as if it's some niche aspect of women's health.
Just have that on a billboard. like you can email Sarah. Like, everybody is born. This should be funded. Argument over. I don't need any stats. I don't need any data. I don't think I need to do a survey to work out how many people are born. They all are. Like,
It's the only
ridiculous.
thing other than death that fundamentally unites every single person in the entire world.
Yeah. It's not a women's issue.
No.
It's not a mother's issue.
There are 4 people that live in my house, and I am the only woman, and we were all born.
Yes.
So
Me too.
Before we get a bit hysterical.
Sorry.
Hysterical women. I'm also
Everyone take a breath and have a drink.
Well, we're actually coming to the end.
Oh.
Sophie's just getting started.
I was just getting warmed up.
What we do at the end of our podcasts, it's called the beauty spot, a regular little area to think about that moment of beauty or clarity that you've had in your journey amongst all of the tricky or difficult things that you've experienced or been part of. We'd love to hear what yours was. What was your beauty spot?
Oh, there's so many little bits. I actually want to come back to something that you said earlier. In total passing, I don't even really know if you realised that you said it.
Uh-oh.
Probably not.
No,
I won't
it's
have.
nice.
I
It's
won't
nice.
have.
Is that you said that the midwives that were looking after you in your second birth, they just trusted you.
Yeah.
And I think this is the bit...
And my first, sorry, just to
And your
clarify in
first.
case they recognise me, which they won't. But yeah.
But this is I think the bit that's missing is that we often talk about, I just want people, I want to be able to trust the people that are looking after me.
Yes.
And it wasn't until my second birth where I had that realisation that I was like, oh, no, I don't want to just trust them. I want them to trust me.
Yes.
And I think I don't think women are trusted. They are not trusted to be given adequate information to make their decisions.
Yes.
They are not trusted with difficult conversations because it might be too scary for them.
Yeah.
They are not trusted to make decisions in really difficult moments of a birth. They are not trusted when they say, oh, I think I'm in labour, or I think the baby is coming, or I just need to check. Like, you need to prove yourself.
Yeah.
And I think if we were to develop a system where midwives, doctors, anybody that is caring for a woman or birthing person is actually given their own space for reflection and their own, time for learning, so that they can actually trust the people that are turning up in labour or pregnancy or postnatally, and that they are able to believe absolutely everything that they say. That is, I think, the kind of missing puzzle.
Yes, I do too.
So true.
We don't trust mothers. It's true, and actually that relates
Or
straight
women,
back to
or birthing
or
people,
women
or
or
like,
birthing
as in, like,
people.
but not just in the setting of giving birth, right?
Yeah, no, we don't.
Full
We
stop.
don't. But I actually think that relates full circle back to what you said at the start, which is like, how did we get here? It was because we took birth from it being centered on the person who was birthing, and listened to them and listened to what they needed to support them, listen to what they were saying about their bodies, to something where there was an expert telling women what they were experiencing, and we haven't left that. We're still much closer to that version than we are to a version where we listen to the people who birth. And I think when we go back to like my rant about policy recommendations, I love how you summarize that, because that's essentially what we're saying.
Yeah.
Trust those birthing about what's happening to them. Trust those pregnant about what they're feeling in their bodies as the number one. Now, that doesn't mean you can't challenge it. That doesn't mean you can't say, do you think it could be this? What about that? Have you thought of this? But like, their opinion is the number one. And I think we need to...
It's as simple and complex, and as complex as that, right?
Yeah,
Like, it's like, that's it.
We overcomplicate it. And the way you've done that is beautiful, because that's exactly what it is.
And what a lovely way to end. Megan, thank you so much.
Thanks,
You've been
Megan.
listening to Delivering Better. You can find out more about our campaign on @Delivering Better on Instagram.